Do you know where Dylan is now? No, I do not.
You lied to us about Dylan being on your property the whole morning and you knowing about it. You had that phone. You threw it in the pond.
What about the phone?
Why did you throw it in the pond?
Did I?
Yes.
I'm the guy that's supposed to keep an eye on you.
This 61-year-old man is a close friend to a family searching for their 19-year-old son, but he stands right beside them, smiling through it all, knowing they would never see him again. He does everything to hide his evil deeds, and uncovering his secrets would be less of a relief and more of a tragedy for the missing boy's family after they discover why he did it and just how horrible their 19-year-old son's last moments were.
Dylan's a spoiled little brat. I agree with him 100%. Dylan needs to be taught a lesson.
At 6:51 a.m. on May 28, 2022, 19-year-old Dylan Rounds called his grandmother, saying he would drive his seed truck to a shed because of the weather and then walk back to his farm 5 miles away. It was a far distance, but one that Dylan had traveled many times before, so this seemed like another routine trip, but they had no idea that it would be his last trip ever. As 2 days later, his parents called the police reporting that their son had gone missing.
Alright guys, so this is the family.
Yes.
Okay. So tell me again what you have suspicion to believe right now.
Dylan's parents explained to Box Elder County officers that they hadn't heard from Dylan in 2 days, and with his last known location being the farm and the shed, law enforcement began searching for clues to his disappearance, which was when they found a stained rag towel and a lightly stained pair of Georgia work boots near the shed where Dylan parked his seed truck. The officers took the items for examination, and as the search continued, detectives began asking for possible suspects in Dylan's disappearance, and they were given different names of people within and outside of Utah, with no idea that the person who had all the answers to their questions and whose hands had felt Dylan's blood, he was standing right beside them throughout the entire investigation.
I'm the guy that's supposed to keep an eye on you.
So, what's your name? Don and
Jim Brenner.
Jim Brenner?
This is 61-year-old James Brenner, and he is the last person to ever see 19-year-old Dylan Rounds alive. 2 days after Dylan went missing, his grandmother, unable to reach his phone, called 2 family friends who stayed near Dylan to go searching for him, and they would become the most important people in this case. One of them was Donald Hately, Dylan's grandfather's friend, and the other was James Brenner, who was very active in the case and seemed very eager to help the officers.
Like I say, he was here. He had to have been here. Brought the truck here.
So his grandparents, how long have you known Dylan's grandparents?
Oh, I've never met his grandma, but I've known Larry for a couple of years. He's probably the nicest guy. He's just a good guy.
Interestingly, Dylan parked his seed truck in a shed yards away from James's motorhome as they shared the land space. So ordinarily, the officers suspected that James would be the last person to see Dylan before he went missing, but James denied this with statements that would later be used against him.
You didn't see anybody else around here?
I left here about 1:30, between 1:30 and 2, went over to Don's. And I was there until about 9 o'clock at night. When I came back, that truck was there.
Okay. And did you know the truck was coming?
No.
Okay.
Dylan don't tell anybody what he's doing.
Okay. So you weren't here when Dylan came down here? Is that kind of a mutual understanding that he can park stuff down here? Or?
Yeah, but he's supposed to let me know about it, a day ahead of time, because I was building a chicken coop in there. I don't know if you've seen it with all my tools on it.
Oh, yeah.
And I had it right in the middle, so I had light. He pulled everything out. He knocked my horse corral out. So I didn't know what the hell was going on.
So that's your horse on the other side of this little hill here. Okay.
I didn't know. That's just the way Dylan is. So I pulled the truck out. I took the wall out that he knocked out and put that other panel in there, and I backed the truck in straight.
Oh, okay.
James described Dylan as a selfish person to prove his statement, but it only hinted at a motive of wanting Dylan gone. This wasn't necessarily an interrogation, but more of a conversation, as James was an old man and a supposed family friend, so the officer didn't necessarily place him as a suspect.
Like I say, he was here. He had to have been here. Brought the truck here.
Yeah. Huh, that would make sense.
James tried so hard to blend in and not come off as a person of interest, and so the officers had their prime suspect right beside them all this while, and they had no idea. But things were about to take an unexpected turn once the officers realized that James Brenner had an active arrest warrant for aggravated assault in an unrelated incident. This warrant was highly unexpected and gave the officers a chance to see a side of James that they had never seen before once they moved to arrest him, and he insisted that no one enter his home.
What about your dog and the key?
He's gonna take care of the dog. He's gonna lock the gate. I don't want anybody in there. Okay? I just want to make sure that people aren't flying in and out of there and they leave the gate open and I gotta go up the mountain to get my horse. Over this bullshit.
Alright, Jim, can I just step the back of my truck, man?
Yeah.
Anything in your pockets to worry about?
Yeah, I got a real dangerous Swiss Army knife in this pocket.
Okay, got
Of course, it's Friday. That means I gotta sit and rot in jail till Monday, right?
That I don't know. I don't know.
Oh, I do know. I do know. I gotta rot in fucking jail till Monday.
James was visibly upset, particularly about his property and gate being left open, suggesting that he was very possessive of his space, something the officers would eventually use against him. You see, James was known as Jim to most community people, and some of them had unpleasant things to say about him, one of them being his own neighbor.
It was another thing that I had heard about, but there's lots of stuff being said. Shit, that's just, you know what I mean? But I did have someone, I don't know if it was yesterday or the day before, and they were talking about there's a group of people, I guess, that...
James's warrant was for repeatedly hitting a man with a chair multiple times, but it gets worse when you discover that James had also beaten up his own neighbor.
He's been driving that steady for the last 3 weeks. Yeah. I'm doing fuel. But everybody keeps saying, that's fuel done. We need to find fuel.
Well, let's get this on. Okay. So these don't move on you anymore, okay?
Yeah.
So, just pat him down. What about your dog and the key?
He's gonna take care of this dog and he's gonna lock the gate. I don't want anybody in there.
Yeah.
Okay?
Yeah, we're not going in there.
What?
Your keys?
He said he needs your keys.
Keys for what?
Okay, if I don't need them, I don't need them.
Just lock the gate.
Okay.
I don't want that.
Is your house locked?
The house is locked, yeah.
Okay.
And the cooler is in the shop. I haven't been to the house yet.
James was allegedly short-tempered, and his possessiveness over the land shared with Dylan made the detective suspect that Dylan might have hit James's last nerve on his trip to drop the truck in the shed, forcing James to make him disappear. James was taken to an interrogation room where the detectives planned to question him regarding Dylan's disappearance, and while James had tried to avoid appearing suspicious, he did something no one would have expected when he revealed why he and Donald Hately stopped working for Dylan.
Well, he'd been in Burley 3 times in 3 days. Every day for 3 days he'd go to Burley, not tell anybody that he was going there.
You're talking about Dylan?
Dylan, yeah.
Okay.
This is the way the shit that he would pull. And then he comes back, and me and Don are trying to... I quit working for Dylan, but I helped Don out, right? And Don said to Kurt, where the hell's Dylan at? Oh, he's up in Burley. Well, that kind of pissed Don off. And Dylan comes back, drives right by us, and he's down there working on a friggin' washing machine. And Don just got pissed off. He grabbed all the tools that belonged to Dylan. He went back, handed them, he says, here's your tools back, I quit. And Dylan was standing there like, you know, Dylan's a spoiled little brat. Okay? His grandfather wrote out a $300 check for him to buy a farm. His father never disciplined him. The only one that ever got yelled at up there was Larry, the grandfather. Dylan would yell at him, Dustin would yell at him. So Don just got sick of it. He wasn't getting paid, but Dylan wanted him to work miracles. He couldn't do it. So he gave the tools back, and he said, that's it, I quit. And Don's not a well guy either. That one tractor down there, he got run over 2 years ago by that tractor.
Mm-hmm.
He was in the hospital for getting rehabilitated all winter. So, and I was with Don when this happened. I agree with him 100%. Dylan needed to be taught a lesson.
At this point, James's game plan wasn't clear, but saying that about a now missing 19-year-old boy put him in a really bad spot. But it would only get worse for him. During the examination of Dylan's blood-stained boots, there was discovered to be a touch DNA, and that DNA belonged to James, meaning that at some point, James touched Dylan's shoe, which was covered in blood. This was a terrifying reveal, and James had an equally terrifying reaction to it.
What are we going to find DNA-wise on your boots? We're going to find your DNA on them?
If I picked them up, you'd probably find my fingerprints.
Did you pick them up?
I pick up my fingerprints on everything out there.
I know, but did you pick his boots up?
I did pick a boot up that day and throw it. I walked out there to check on my horse, and there was a boot laying there.
Was that the same one as what we found when we were there?
I didn't see the boots that you found.
Okay.
But I know it was over in that general direction.
Well.
So that day you picked the boots up and you threw it?
One of those days. Like I said, my horse was out there, I wanted to catch him, and there's a little path, and I stayed on the path, and there was a boot there.
James was unfazed throughout the interaction, a surprise considering the officers were inching closer to his evil crimes. But this calm demeanor was only an act because once he returned home, James handed something over to Donald Haley, which was so suspicious that Donald had to tell the cops once invited for an interview.
And I remember it. When he brought me them guns, he said, I need you to hold on to these for me. And I said, why? He said, well, I'm the low fruit on the tree. They're going to be looking at me.
Mm-hmm.
He said, even though I can legally have these, I want you to hold them for me. And I said, okay, that makes sense. Because at the time, I didn't think he had anything to do with it.
Mm-hmm.
And the more I talked to you guys and Jeff, you know, the more evidence was coming in. It was like, holy shit, he did this. And I just, like I said, it freaks me out to this day that somebody could be that cold.
Mm-hmm.
James stowed away 2 rifles and a revolver with Donald, who now doubted his innocence. He confirmed that James was in his home from 3 p.m. to 9 p.m. on the Saturday Dylan went missing, but then concluded that he committed the crime before arriving at his home.
When, you know, after he had done this, after he had murdered Dylan, he came to your place and had ribs and stuff, and it's really hard to grasp that he would have just been acting like every normal day Jim.
That freaks me out to this day.
Because
be that cold.
I don't know that, well, and that's just it, you know, and that's why we're here. Because that doesn't look good in any way. Because it would be very, very rare that someone would be able to do something like that and not even act different when he came and spent that time with you.
I've had quite a bit of time to be running that over and over in my head, trying to see if there was any tells that I missed or anything, because I still can't believe that somebody could be that. I mean, I get the jitters when I shoot a deer. And it takes a long time for the adrenaline to settle down. And how he could pull that off and then come to my house and act perfectly normal, it freaks me out.
Since James was a felon, his guns were confiscated and he was taken to the Box Elder County Sheriff's Office for a polygraph interview. This would be his last interrogation, as it would reveal what exactly happened on the day Dylan disappeared and how James made that happen. Once the interview began, James was asked to list his timeline of events on May 28, 2022, and the officers would gather a case against him from there.
If he was doing something at his own speed.
Okay.
And he liked secrets. He didn't like telling anybody what he was doing.
Which if people relied on him, that could be a little bit frustrating.
Well, me and Don never knew when the hell he was going to be. I mean, there was times last winter we didn't see him for 3 months. You know?
And then all of a sudden he'd show up.
He'd show up.
He wouldn't come back.
Yeah, he wouldn't tell you. So, I mean, this is just,
the way Dylan was. I'm trying to be honest here. I mean,
No, I appreciate that. Let's go to the day of, I guess, Saturday. I guess on that Saturday before Memorial Day, it was the 28th of May. I don't know if you remember that. He was. What do you remember about what you were doing on that day? I know that other agents or other police have talked to you about it. It's the Saturday before Memorial Day, before you went missing. What can you give me a timeline for your day on Saturday?
got up, had coffee, breakfast.
Do you get up really early in the morning, or?
Get up about 7 on the weekends. About there. Depends on what the weather's like. And then I was out. I dug out some trusses out back of the shop. They're 2x2 trusses that I've been tearing down so I can make a chicken coop. And I think I went out and did a little bit of fencing, and then I came back and I worked on the chicken coop a little bit more. And
where are you putting the chicken coop? Is it right next to your trailer, or?
It's in the shop.
Oh, okay. You're building it in the shop?
I'm building it in the shop.
Okay.
And it's going to be next to the trailer when I get it kind of away from the trailer. But no, I'm building it in the shop because it's in out of the weather.
Yeah.
And then about 1 or 2, somewhere's in there, I went to the pond and I got some wood and some water. And then I left from there and went over to my buddy Don's. He was cooking ribs.
Okay.
And so he likes to cook, I like to eat. And he's got a
combo.
He's got a beautiful stainless steel gas grill over there. So I usually on the weekends I'll buy ribs or brisket or something, and he cooks. And then I got home at about 9 o'clock at night, somewhere in that vicinity.
How do you know it was around 9? Was it dark out, or?
It was just getting dark. It was dark, but it was still to where you could see.
And do you drive over with one of your vehicles?
Yeah.
Okay, what kind of vehicle do you drive?
A blue Chevy
Silverado?
94 Schultz Silverado.
Okay. All right. And you came home around 9. And on your property, is there how many entrances or exits to your property? Okay.
Unsurprisingly, the polygraph considered James's report deceptive, but there was a lot more to his deception. Before the interview, the detectives got a search warrant for James's phone and already knew his movements on that particular day, but wanted to give him a chance to come clean before they started laying the truth on him.
And he parked the truck in that morning, and so if he was there, you would have seen it. But you're saying that all morning you were there at your house on your property, and you didn't see his truck at all that morning. Even when you left for the pond, the Cinda Pond, and you drove out that back gate, you passed and you saw that there was no truck there.
There was no truck there.
And the first time that you saw that truck was when you came back around 9 o'clock that night, and you saw that truck there. Okay. And you didn't, obviously if you didn't see the truck, you did not see Dylan at all that day.
No, I haven't seen Dylan for 3 weeks before that.
Okay. And
I think Don seen him a week or so earlier at the bar in Montello.
Okay.
But I don't go to the bar in Montello.
And that day, was there any contact via cell phone? I know you said that he tried calling that morning, but you never picked up. No text messages that went back and forth?
No text messages. There was one phone call that popped up later that was from 6 o'clock in the morning.
Okay. All right, so you had no contact with Dylan that day. You didn't see him. You didn't talk to him on the phone.
Nope.
You didn't see him backing the truck in and get pissed off that he was backing over all your stuff.
Special Agent Jeff there's got my phone. He checked it out. There's no contact between me and Dylan.
Okay, on that day. Okay. Well, here's your, in order to kind of clear your name, what questions would you ask if you were law enforcement? We need to come up with some questions to find out if you were involved with his disappearance. What questions would you ask?
Forensic analysis on James's phone revealed that on the day Dylan disappeared, James's phone first moved at 7:03 a.m. and continued moving around his property until 2:37 p.m. when it traveled from the barn to the Lucin Pond at 2:52 p.m. before arriving at Don Hately's residence at 3:02 p.m. By now, the Lucin Pond was the one place the detectives hadn't searched, and since it appeared to be a place of interest for James, they arrived at the pond, searched around the water pipe James's phone placed him on the day Dylan disappeared, and inside they found Dylan's phone, and after analyzing it, were able to pinpoint Dylan's movement and ultimately uncover what happened to him on the day he mysteriously went missing. At 6:30 a.m. on May 28, 2022, Dylan leaves his farm and arrives at the barn to keep his seed truck at 6:49 a.m., where he stays until 7:36 a.m., 33 minutes after James's phone's first movement that day. At 7:36 a.m., Dylan's phone leaves the barn to arrive at his farm at 8:03 a.m., but immediately on arrival, the phone leaves the farm at 8:04 a.m. and heads back to the barn where he arrives at 8:30 a.m. His phone continues to move around the property while there, but suddenly at 11:01 a.m., the phone goes stationary on the property and remains stationary for 3 hours and 36 minutes. During this period, James's phone still moves around the property and doesn't go stationary. But at 2:37 p.m., Dylan's phone and James's phone both travel from the barn at the same time to arrive at the Lucin Pond at 2:52 p.m., which is the last recorded movement of Dylan's phone until it was recovered by police 21 days later. James denied speaking to or seeing Dylan on the 28th, but their phones were at the barn at the same time, and since Dylan and James's phones traveled to the Lucin Pond at the same time and through the same route, it was logical that James did see Dylan that day.
But whatever happened was not something characteristic of you, of your personality. It means that something happened in my mind very not planned. You didn't wake up that morning thinking, something's gonna happen, I'm gonna do something to Dylan that day. You didn't wake up like that, but something did happen, okay? I'm 100% sure there was some contact and that something did happen, but it's not characteristic of you. And that's why what I want to do is I want to sit and I want to talk about what caused that uncharacteristic interaction between you and Dylan on that Saturday.
I think you're wrong, and I think this whole thing was just bullshit to set me up.
The detective wanted James to confess, so he gave him an easy route, which was to blame the incident on something outside of himself. And while this method can be very effective in getting suspects to confess, James doubled down on his claim of innocence.
Let me tell you this. What I'm telling you is, I don't think that you are some bad guy that goes out and hurts people. I don't think you're someone that goes and does that. What I'm saying is the exact opposite. On the questions I asked you about whether you fit the profile, you were just fine. What that tells me is that you are a good person, not criminal nature. You don't do this all the time, but something did happen that day on Saturday.
Nothing happened.
I think something did, and we just need to talk about what it was and what the circumstances were, okay? I'm not saying that you're some type of a bad person. What I'm saying is something happened that we need to explain. We need to get to the bottom of. There's a lot of different reasons.
I think this whole thing was a setup. I think I was brought up here.
It's not a setup. It's not a setup. And
I'm the low-hanging fruit is what it is.
Okay. Come on in. Yep, come on in. And I'm saying that there is... No, I'm not saying you're a murderer. The questions were about contact with him that day. I know you had contact with Dylan that day, and I know that you have some idea of where he's at, but it's something totally uncharacteristic. It had to have been something that provoked you, and we know that Dylan was good at provoking people.
James refused to confess, and so two detectives entered the room. Detectives usually have different strategies to make suspects confess, and because appealing to his emotions through sympathy wasn't working, the other detectives would use fear to make James confess.
Exactly where Dylan's phone is, except to the point where you go, I didn't see him at all. I left the property around between 1:32. I was at the Lucin Ponds when I get the text saying that the ribs are ready. I go to Don's place. I'm there until 9 o'clock. When I come back at 9 o'clock, his truck is parked in the shed.
So it's got to be me then.
Yes.
Okay.
That's why we also wanted to give you those, like, who else was with you? Because the phone literally goes with you.
And we find it, the phone has been found, and I'm gonna tell you this, we have the ability to pull DNA and fingerprints off of a phone underwater. It's been done. We just have to send it off to the lab and do it. So here's your opportunity to basically come clean and be like, hey man, I fucked up, I'm sorry. You know, things got out of hand, you know.
I never meant
You told me yourself, like, my problem is with my fists, right? Not with guns. You've got a criminal history that involves guns and stuff, but you said, like, there are some things that we know, and there are some things that we believe based on that, and then there's some things that we don't know, and those are the things that you can help us with. Now, we may find those out, or we probably, you know, like, I'm gonna tell you, like, tomorrow, there is gonna be so many fucking people crawling all over that property with everything at the FBI's resources that they have available. They're flying them all in, they're gonna be there tomorrow, and they're gonna fucking scour that place. More so than anything you've seen with search and rescue. And honestly, you can save that a lot of trouble. Like, I firmly believe that you did something to cause the death of this kid. And I also believe that there's a part of you that feels bad for doing it.
I also think that you probably didn't mean to do anything, unless I'm really wrong and you did plan it.
I'm not leaving here tonight, am I?
Why don't you do this? Tell me where he's at.
I don't know.
You do know. You do know. You knew what, let me ask you this, how come you didn't tell us about taking his phone and throwing it in the pond? How come you didn't tell us about giving the black powder rifles to Don Haley?
You never asked, for one thing.
No, I asked you exactly what happened before, and I asked you what happened after. And you just left that out.
No.
But what's gonna happen? Like, listen.
And with continued denial, the detectives tossed their strategies and just wanted to explain to James just how evil he was to deny his involvement in Dylan's disappearance, even with the very obvious proof against him.
I got rid of those guns because I knew that was going to be the next thing that come down the line. You're going to come and take them.
But why the phone? Why the phone?
What about the phone?
Why did you throw it in the pond?
Did I?
Yes. Yeah, I mean, it follows you telling me, hey, Jeff, John, this is where I went, this is what I did.
Why would I do that if I threw that phone in the pond?
Because you, even by your own admission, have no idea how technology works. You don't even know how to set up an email. So my guess is that if you had the phone, you're like, what should I do with this? I'll just throw it out. And there you are, you nod your head yes, right? So like, you understand, like, you had that phone, you fucking threw it in the pond. You never told us about it. You lied to us about Dylan being on your property the whole morning and you knowing about it. It's just...
We can see the phone follow your entire path.
And just then, with all eyes on him, the rising tension in the room, and the realization that his crimes had been exposed, James would ask to end the interrogation.
I'd like to go home, or I'd like to get a lawyer or something. I got animals to take care of. This is bullshit.
It's not bullshit. It's not bullshit.
This is an opportunity.
Inside Dylan's phone was a recording taken on the day Dylan disappeared, and it showed James in a camouflage t-shirt wiping off a revolver pistol, which appeared to be the same gun James gave Donald Haley for safekeeping. There was also a red substance that appeared to be blood on James's left elbow, wrist, and hand, and when detectives submitted the camouflage t-shirt for tests, it had Dylan's DNA all over it. With the multiple items of evidence, the case was changed from a missing persons case to murder, and James Brenner was charged with first-degree felony aggravated murder, abuse or desecration of a dead human body, and obstruction of justice in a criminal investigation and proceedings. In hopes of a reduced sentencing, James pled guilty to the charges and also pointed investigators to Dylan's remains in Lucin, which showed 2 bullet holes in Dylan's skull.
Mr. Brenner, is that what happened in this case?
Yes, I did.
James Brennan was eventually sentenced to 1 to 15 years in prison for the murder of Dylan Rounds.